Become a wealth creator today. Text VISIT to 800-454-1184 to schedule your 15-minute call with Eric and his team. That's VISIT to 800-454-1184.
According to this saying, nothing is certain except death and taxes. And that tax impact is something you just can't escape, even in retirement. But there are some steps that you can take to help reduce the impact of taxes on your retirement savings. And that is why I am here with Eric Heckman today, because he's going to help us with that on Wealth Creator Radio. Here's the number you need for our show today, 800-454-1184. Use that number as you call for a complimentary appointment, 800-454-1184. Now, if you text the word toolbox to that number, not only can you get the appointment, but you can also get the toolbox, which includes Eric's book, Worry Less Wealth, and then other educational materials that will apply to your retirement. So text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184. And remember, you can find us online anytime at wealthcreatorradio.com. Eric, hello to you.
Hey, Luann. Yeah, it's, I don't know if it's good to talk about taxes, but it is critical to talk about taxes. Nobody likes them, so they may not be the most favorite of topics, but paying less in taxes, I think actually people do like to hear about that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's why it's good if you can figure out how to pay less in taxes legally, and that's what we're talking about today. And yeah, the only thing that stays the same is change. You know, we've heard that, right? Nothing stays the same. There's always change. Over the years, we've seen a lot of changes in the ways that we're taxed, right?
Well, yeah. So, of course, back in 1913, there was this little thing that they said, only a few people would be affected by, called the income tax.
Yeah.
Supposed to only hit the wealthier people. But then, of course, we have a world war and boom, rates shoot up.
Yep.
And of course, now everybody pays it. And it's gone up and down, and there's also probably a lot of smoke and mirrors, I think, nowadays has been done with taxes. The first one was kind of in Reagan's time frame when he lowered income tax rates, but you used to be able to write off credit cards, car loans, all sorts of things. You could write off almost everything, it seemed like. And so he took away deductions and lowered the brackets. Well, if you have less write-offs, and yes, your bracket's smaller, but did you end up paying less tax? And, and it's kind of very similar to what happened with the Trump tax laws. We saw the huge limit of state and local tax write-off up to $10,000, married or single. So that was a huge hit for a lot of people. A lot of people had, anywhere from $20,000 to $80,000 in write-offs that disappeared.
Wow.
But the brackets went down, right?
Okay,
But you had more taxable income. So did your tax actually go down? A lot of it's how are you getting taxed, knowing really about where the tax is, getting hit by. And, one of the big things, of course, is they always said you're going to retire in a lower tax bracket. Yet they keep spending money like crazy and not paying off the debt and having more record deficits and then record debts. So yeah, don't ever fall prey, I should say, to that you're going to retire in a lower bracket, because lots of times people are often in retirement almost paying more in tax because whatever write-offs they did have are gone.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like how you said a lot of smoke and mirrors, That's so interesting. You really do have to look at the whole situation. Now, what are some things we need to know about regarding how different sources of income are taxed in retirement? I feel like we don't all know that.
Yeah, so probably one of the sneakier ones was Social Security taxation. So that first started in the 80s. And what happened there is they said, we're only going to tax the wealthy people. Well, the wealthy people were at the time, I think, making $34,000.
Yeah.
Now in the 80s, 80s you could buy a pretty nice house for $100,000, right?
That's true,
so it is all a little relative there. In the 90s, they said, okay, well, we're going to tax. Yeah, the first one was 50%, but now we're going to add another one where we'll tax up to 85%. But again, we're only going to have it, 34 to 44,000 now. But the sneaky part on that for both of those laws is neither one ever indexed to inflation. So now pretty much most everybody's paying tax on their Social Security, at least at the federal level, but only 85% of it's taxable. So there's a tiny bit that's tax free. But then of course, if you have a bunch of money in 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, all these things, those are 100% taxable. You have no, basis or anything. Doesn't matter how much you put in because you never paid tax on that money going in.
Right.
So now you got to pay tax on the full balance coming out. And, and those can be shockingly high in terms of how much money you have to end up paying. And, and then of course you have other things like, just regular investment accounts. Well, those ones you have basis where you know how much you put in, you have capital gains. So yeah, depending on how, I like to kind of think of these as different buckets, right? So you've got like this taxable bucket, that'd be the stuff like your savings account or brokerage account. Those are fairly tax efficient somewhat, but you only pay taxes on the gains or interest. And then you have that tax deferred bucket. That's the really nasty one with all the 401k and IRA money. That's all taxable. And then hopefully you have some in tax free, which is Roth or life insurance, cash values accessed a certain way, and some different types of bonds sometimes. But so what you want to do is think about those various buckets, and then of course you have Social Security coming in. That's mostly federal taxable and typically not state taxable. So all those things can create your own tax liability. You actually can invent your own tax bracket and such, just depending on which monies you take and how much from each bucket. And that's something you don't do when you're working, right? You just get your W-2 and you figure out your taxes, and it's pretty simple. So,
exactly.
So the big part that people have to really realize is, there's kind of some minefields really when you start withdrawing that money and take that money out. So you have to plan this way ahead. So with our clients, what we do is usually either in December or January, we're talking to them about how are we going to get that money for that next year? What makes the most sense? Especially when you first retire, sometimes maybe you had some payouts and other stuff, and you don't need to cash in a bunch of stuff. Well, maybe you have some super low tax liability that year. Well, good year to do a Roth conversion and such. So there's a lot of planning that goes. It's a lot more complicated than you think. That's one comment I always get from so many people that say is like, I never would have thought it's so complicated to be retired.
Gosh. Yeah.
And they thought it'd be easier, but no, it's actually almost tougher. So, at least financially, to figure all this stuff out. So that's why you need a plan. That's why we're here for people. So, again, like you mentioned already, we've set up some great resources in our digital toolbox. Are you paying too much in taxes in retirement? Good thing to read. Social Security decision. Will your money last as long as you do? Obviously, like you mentioned, my book, Worry Less Wealth. And, you can also set up a time to talk with me, Eric Heckman, for no cost, no obligation. We just go over what you're worried about and kind of help you with any concerns you have. So very easy to get all this access to the toolbox. All you have to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
And again, this is Wealth Creator Radio. So happy you joined us today with Eric Heckman. Eric, how do you talk to people who come in are concerned about taxes impacting their retirement in the future? Because it's hard to know. You don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that people need to be planning way out. I mean, for my own sons that are, in their 20s, just starting out, only do Roth. Don't ever do pre-tax stuff. And, really that advice goes for anybody under 50. And even in your 50s, it might be making sense to convert. And, but really the only way I know how to do it is having an income plan. So when you have an income plan, it tells you, what's happening between now and whenever you retire. And then once you retire and switch to having to live off that income, how's that money coming? How's it taxed? And my only concern is, how do I pay the least tax over my client's lifetime, not 1 year? So a lot of people get hung up on, they'll ask their accountant, how do I save taxes this year? Well, that might be the worst answer in the world, but because you asked that question, he might answer and tell you, but it might actually cause you more taxes over your lifetime. So really that's what you want to focus on, is how do you lower your overall lifetime taxes? And that's what we do here at Heckman Financial. And that's one of the things you can get access to. Again, is if you want to get access to the toolbox, or if you want to set up a time, it's all in there. All you have to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
And still more to come with Eric Heckman. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more of Wealth Creator Radio.
Be sure to like and subscribe to Wealth Creator Radio so you can stay up to date on ways to build your wealth and create a retirement you and your family will enjoy for years to come. Like and subscribe today and create your wealth for tomorrow with Wealth Creator Radio.
Are you happy with your Medicare plan? Even if you are, what was good for you this year might not be what's best for you next year. The team at Heckman Financial can help you sort through all the options to find the best one for you. Call now, 800-454-1184. That's 800-454-1184.
Hi, I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Eric Heckman. He is president of Heckman Financial. So happy to have you along with us today. You know, there's a song that Rod Stewart wrote, and one line in it, well, the name of the song is Ooh La La. I don't remember it. Do you remember that, Eric? Ooh La La? Rod Stewart?
Yeah.
You do?
So,
okay.
yeah.
Well, the line in it says, I wish I knew what I know now when I was younger. And how many times have we all wished that? You know, I'm like, oh man, wish I knew then what I know now. And then there's a freelance copywriter, and she recently wrote things that she would tell her 20-year-old self. So I thought it would be kind of fun to ask you, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self, Eric?
Yeah, well, we all wish we had done stuff differently, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, I think when you're younger, the kind of big thing is, of course, one is just avoiding debt, avoiding the temptation of everybody, just, click, tap, 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 right? You don't have to insert your card anymore. And, so that's one hazardous thing is trying to keep up with the Joneses or buying all the latest and greatest. And most of that stuff you end up throwing away anyways after a while, right? So, so that'd be one thing, just watch how much you're spending. But, probably more importantly, just really funding some money in Roth, be pre-tax, but also have enough money in savings. And then if you want to move up to the next level, whatever that is, if it's a bigger apartment or trying to buy a place or something, save up ahead of time, have that 3 to 6 months of savings for that debt load or for that, that spending level that you have now. So if you're spending, say it's $3,000 a month now, but you want to be spending $5,000 a month. Well, okay, let's make sure you have that money saved up. Let's see if you have $30,000 sitting in the bank, then you're now have the savings for somebody who's spending $5,000 a month, right? So then go up to the next level. But most people, what they do is they get the debt, and then they don't have the money to do the savings, and then they wonder why they never have the money. And then they start figuring out when they're 40 or 50, and it's a lot late then, right? So then that's when we start talking about, I wish I'd done that when I was 20, right? So I think that's one of the critical things is really having that savings first, and planning ahead a little bit better versus just going out and doing all the stuff you want to do. Yeah,
that's the bad thing. You start your career and you have the, finally have money, and then you start spending, and then you get in debt. That was my husband and I. What you just said, that was my husband and I. And then we're like, okay, here we go. We got to get serious, coming up here, getting closer to retirement. So if you look back at your life, so in your 20s, you're laying the groundwork really, truly for your, financial future. Like I just said, my husband and I, in our show, we talk about the stages of retirement, but financial planners say there are 5 financial stages of life. So we're going to kind of go over those right now. Your clients, are around probably my age or older, so they probably have, maybe kids or grandkids in this first stage of life. So talk about that, and we want to talk about paying forward information to the next generation to help them do better.
Yeah, well, like I said, big thing would be savings and debt. So buy the stuff that you can afford, not the stuff that you want, right?
Yeah.
So, which is tough to do. And so, so start building up that savings, have that, that ideally that 6 months of expenses saved up. Then you can go out and buy some of that other stuff. But also along the way, you got to be at least funding that match, getting up to, if you're working at a job, at least get that match. And nowadays, of course, a lot of people are just doing the gig economy type stuff, right? They might have, smaller, littler jobs type of things that add up to a full-time job. And you may not have those matches. Well, you still need to be putting money away. So that's a big one is, try to at least be putting at least 5% away long-term when you're in your 20s, because that money will grow to be huge, down the road. But I think that's kind of the debt and the savings would be the first ones. And, then once you get past that, then you can start doing a little bit more a little bit more sophisticated planning or whatever you want to call it.
Okay. So after that early career, then, you start having kids and, building your career, right? Getting into the positions that you want. So let's talk about those financial steps that are happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing, especially in the Bay Area, a lot of people, they want to get that ideal house. Well, that's sometimes a really bad way to go. I used to play Monopoly a lot as a kid and still undefeated. And I almost don't want to play anymore because I don't want to lose. But every time I played Monopoly, I would always buy the cheapest houses. I would buy all the cheapest properties because you could very easily get houses put on them and hotels and all that. And you almost always end up winning. And whoever wants to save up for the expensive ones can never do much with them. Interesting. And so same thing with, when you're first starting out, just get into some sort of real estate. And amazingly, after 5 or 10 years, you're going to have some equity in there. Then you'll be able to move up to that next house. But if you wait to save up a little bit more, guess what happens to that price of the house? It goes up a lot more, a lot more. And so sometimes just getting into something is worth it. So that'd be one thing. Like I said, having that savings, building up that saving, that retirement, this is where you would need to start probably plowing a little bit more money away too, is once you do have that house, then okay, how do we ramp up these savings? How do we, start building that money up more? Because as you are starting to age more, you want that money to be growing over time. And, the more time you have, the easier it is for that money to grow. So, I think it's one of the big critical things. Okay.
Now, do you work with people in these first 2 stages very often in this part of financial life that we're talking about?
No, not too much. We do for a lot of our adult children of our clients. So, so we've met with a lot of them and they'll come in and, ask some questions. And, sometimes, we do work with some younger people. I mean, I've also had some younger people that want to retire at 50 or 55. And so to me, they're like somebody who's trying to retire at 65, right? So, so we will work with those. But I think people in these earlier stages, it's more about just getting the basics, right? Making sure you've got, all insurance stuff covered, life insurance, all that type of stuff, that you've got that money being put away, trying to save that 15% between long-term, short-term, and medium-term money. Those are the big keys. And so, that's something where there's a lot of online stuff. You could also, there's a lot of other financial advisors that you look at, and that's something we refer people to, even if they need that help too.
Yeah. So there are a lot of really good people that can help, savers with their money, and you can grow your money and all that with those type of advisors. But you mostly work with people who are closer to retirement.
Yeah, exactly. So for us, we're working with people that are doing that shift, because that shift can be hazardous, right? So there's a lot of mess ups that you can do in your 20s and 30s and overcome them in your 40s and 50s. It's not as easy, but it's doable. If you mess up something in your 60s, it's really hard to fix it in your 80s. So you get one retirement. You get a long time to save that money up, but you only get really one time to spend it down. And so that's why you really want to have good, solid advice when we're talking about that payout phase, when you're starting to withdraw the money, because it's also really freaky for people. It's so funny. I mean, I had this couple in here, Alan Tina, and they were doing that shift. He worked for PG&E, and he's doing that shift into that retirement. And I was telling him that a lot of people just have emotional issues, literally taking that money back out. And I think he heard me the first time, but he didn't listen to me. And then, the next time we met, he's like, "Wow, you are so right." You told me this thing about people freak out, and he repeated what I said, which was pretty funny, and it is something that I think a lot of people just don't quite get, and then there's just so many decisions too. It's a lot more complicated than people think. When you're building the money up, it's just grow,
right.
Keep putting it away. When you're taking it back out, it's a whole new thing.
Right. Now, would you say, is it ever too early to start thinking about retirement?
Oh my gosh, no. Yeah. I mean, that's, going back to, what you would have done when you're 20. I mean, just, if you look at the compounding, well, the rule 72 basically says if money doubles. If you earn 7%, it doubles basically every 10 years. And so if you think about that in your 20s, if you just put in 1,000, that 1,000 could be then 2, then 4, then 8, and 16,000. Well, what if you did that multiple times, right? I mean, all of a sudden you've got all this money there when you're older versus if you wait to start when you're 40. Well, you miss 2 of those doublings, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty brutal to try to wait that long. I mean, you're not going to have to get super accurate, right? This is just, are you somewhat in the general direction, right? It's like, am I if you're trying to drive across the country, am I at least heading east? You may not be on the right road, but at least you're in the right direction generally, correct? So that's really what you're talking about when you're younger. And so one of the things we have set up is a lot of great tools in our digital toolbox. And, these are things like, will your money last as long as you do? Are you paying too much in taxes in retirement? The Social Security decision, even my book, Worry Less Wealth, which is, really from people 50s on. And that's all sitting there free of charge for you. It's quick, easy reads and downloads. All you have to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
Your pre-retirement years are where some of the most critical financial decisions are happening. We're going to tackle some of those decisions coming up next with Eric. This is Wealth Creator Radio.
Do you know whether your retirement plan has any weak points? Discover ways on giving your financial future the proper tune-up. Simply go online to wealthcreatortoolbox.com to gain a better understanding in taxes, Social Security, and other ways to manage your portfolio.
And that's how it's done.
That's wealthcreatortoolbox.com.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Eric Heckman. It's no surprise that what's right for your money now probably won't be the case in about 10, 20 years from now. There are 5 main stages to your financial life. Okay, that's what we're talking about today. And this stage that we're getting to, the 3rd stage, is really, really important. These are your pre-retirement years. And Eric, this is who you work with. Again, it's an exciting time for these people. Their house is probably paid off. Hopefully their kids are off the payroll. And you are in your peak earning years. But it's also a time of life when you cannot afford to ruin it with the wrong financial moves, right?
No, exactly. And around here, probably in Silicon Valley, your house probably isn't really paid off. Every once in a while you run into those people who were able to do that, but at least hopefully you're not refinancing and taking more cash out or anything like that. And then I do agree, yes. So hopefully the kids are off the payroll. It's always one of my first questions: is the bank of mom and dad closed, or is it still operating? And often it's still operating. So yeah, you do have to watch that. Because I had one couple that I think she was spending about $3,000 or $4,000 a month on their adult children.
No,
and they're trying to retire, and so that was a big bone of contention between the two of them. Was we got to cut them off a little bit, this would be when you're starting to have to like position the money in the right spots, right? Because of when you're having the money grow, you just, put it in there. Hopefully it works. Those ups and downs in the market don't really matter, right? Because, as long as they just keep putting money in, it'll come back and all that type of stuff. Well, that works until you have to start withdrawing it, right? So this is where you have to start paying attention to where those placements are. So this is when you start having to go, oh, well, do I have a lot of foundational money, stuff that's not in the market? Because your 401k forces you to have 100% of your money in the market, which is stocks and bonds. What we want to have is have some money that's guaranteed, ideally that's earning some good interest, maybe 5 to 9% or something like that. But something that's earning you some good money that can't go away, because on those bad years, you can go take that money from there. Good years, you take from the market. Mm-hmm. Also, in between there, we usually want to have some steady income stuff. That steady income money is really stuff that investments that are less volatile, that pay you some really good dividends. So again, they give you cash flow. Now, when you're still not retired, you don't necessarily need that cash flow, but it can build up in your portfolio and take advantage of certain times. But yeah, that's what you need to start doing is shifting the money, not 100%. It's not like you're doing oh, you passed it. You got to do a U-turn, right? Recalculate. No, we're not doing that. We're just talking about, let's start shifting and start, getting over there, getting in that general direction and making those changes. Cause also it's one of those things where you don't want to do it all at once, right? Cause who knows what the economics of that time frame will be when you make that decision.
Right. And that's like my husband and I right now. I mean, I'm turning 65 this year. He's right behind me. We're only 8 months apart, but I'm a little bit older. And so that's what we are doing. We're trying to shift, money into our Roth so that we can reduce those taxes in the future. So that's where we are right now. And just thinking about, how we're going to be able to maintain the current lifestyle that we have. What about thinking about plans for healthcare? Is this also the same time you should be doing this time that you should be doing that?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is really a big time to be planning for, the 5 areas that we always talk about when we talk about the blueprint to worry less wealth. And so first is having an income plan, right? Making sure that you've got that money that is going to be able to pay out. Where's it going to come from, right? Will it last long enough? Are you, mostly on track, or do you have to move those dates out farther, right? So that'd be one of the things. And obviously investments, how you're investing it, which we kind of just talked about, is making some of those changes. You brought up Roth, how can we lower taxes? What tax moves should we be making? Healthcare is a big one, because if you're pre-65, it's going to be probably $1,000 per person for medical. And once you turn 65, it's probably 300 or 400. So, big difference between those two.
Yeah.
And, when are you going to retire, pre or post 65? That's a big one. And then, then obviously legacy, who's getting your stuff? Are your assets titled in the right way? So, that's one of the things that you really want to be looking at is all 5 of those areas and start having a plan, for those. Cause it is really critical that you do have that plan. And, that's one of the things that we do here at Heckman Financial is, we actually go through that whole process. First, we have just a quick 30-minute phone call where we just talk to people about what their worries are, what their concerns. And then if it makes sense, we'll actually go through that whole blueprint. We'll go through all those 5 areas, tell you where you're headed, free of charge right now. We've been waiving that planning fee. And so that's one of the things that we can do is actually help you go see where you're going to be. And then we'll tell you what's working, what's not, and what things you might want to change. Again, this is just critical information to be getting, especially if you're in that pre-retirement zone and that phase of life. So all you have to do is, if you want to set up a quick time to talk with me, Eric Heckman, text the word VISIT to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word VISIT, 800-454-1184, or book directly online at wealthcreatorradio.com.
And you are listening to Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman of Heckman Financial. He and his team at Heckman Financial work with this stage that we're talking about, pre-retirees and then in retirement. And, Eric will say their system is working very well. They've been helping retirees just like you, and Eric is reaching out to you. That's why we do this show every weekend. He wants you to know that he and his team are here for you. Their goal is to help you worry less about retirement. So getting that financial checkup would be a good time in pre-retirement years to make sure you're on track. And then you already kind of talked a little bit about making that transition from saving for retirement to now you're pulling out money, but you also have to generate income in retirement. So tell us a little bit about that, Eric.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you kind of visualize it, which is always fun on the radio, right?
Yeah.
So, but think about different buckets, right? So you've got your tax deferred bucket, which unfortunately for a lot of people is their biggest bucket. This is your 401ks, IRAs, and all that stuff. This is stuff that you haven't paid tax on. So you got that bucket has a lot of little gotchas, right? Depending on how much you take from there. You got your taxable bucket, which might be your savings and stock accounts, brokerage accounts. That's got a lot less tax ramifications. And then you got the tax-free bucket, which unfortunately is usually the smaller one. That's the Roth IRAs and life insurance and other things that are tax-free. What we want to do is figure out how much should we be taking from each one of those. And then you can actually decide what your tax bracket will be, which seems weird. But when you're working, you just get your W-2 and do your tax return, and it is what it is.
That's that, yeah.
Yeah. So, but in retirement, depending on which bucket and how much you took from which one, that's going to dictate a lot of stuff about your taxes. If you take too much money out of your your tax deferred bucket, your IRAs and 401ks, that might cause your Social Security bucket to get taxed heavier. That's things that people don't tell you about, right? That's the stuff that your tax advisor won't mention because they don't see that you had options of taking it differently, and they're always reporting backwards. So this is where you have to be planning ahead for that next year. Where's that money going to come from? So yeah, it's got to be, and then of course, like you said, these investments need to start generating income. They need to be giving dividends, giving other things, because say if you need to take 4% of your money out and you only have 2% of your portfolio paying dividends, that means you're selling 2% of your shares every month. Well, if the market's up that month, that's not bad. But if it's down for a few months, that means you're selling more shares, selling more shares, selling more shares. And then when the market comes back, those shares are gone. So yeah, that's what makes it a lot more critical.
Eric, this has been great. We've covered a lot of information here about the stages of your financial life. How can people get more information?
Yeah, well, like I said, you need to get once you get to that pre-retirement and then that payout phase, yeah, you need to have a plan. You need to have a lot of data. You need to know what you're doing. Yeah, you don't want to just wing it and hope it works. So yeah, I think education's the best way to do it. So we put up a lot of great resources there at that digital toolbox. My book, Worry Less Wealth. Are you paying too much taxes in retirement? The Social Security decision. Will your money last as long as you do? And even a link to set up a time to talk with me, Eric Heckman. So if that's something you want to do, all you have to do is text the word toolbox to get all this great data. Again, text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
And still more to come with Eric. You're listening to Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman of Heckman Financial. We'll be right back.
Imagine your first day of retirement. What do you see? Let's turn that vision into reality. The first step, get Eric Heckman's Wealth Creator Toolbox. In it, you'll get information on some of the biggest challenges you'll face in retirement. Request your Wealth Creator Toolbox now by texting the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. That's toolbox to 800-454-1184.
Hi, I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Eric Heckman, president of Heckman Financial right here in the Silicon Valley area. There are some words that can stand the test of time, and we're going to go through some timeless advice right now for you to keep in mind for retirement. So here's how it's going to go, Eric. I'm going to give you a quote, and then I want you to talk about what that has to do with retirement planning, okay?
Sounds great.
Okay, here we go. First one is Benjamin Franklin. And oh my gosh, he has so many quotes because he did so much, okay? Here's a good quote from him. Beware of little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship. So that sounds like something we need to think about. Those little expenses that could cause unexpected issues in retirement, right?
Well, not just in retirement. I mean, just all the time, right?
Life.
And, right now, of course, when the subscription model kind of first came out for software and other things, it was amazing how much more profitable a lot of these companies got because, now you don't pay for it once, you pay for a tiny bit every single month, right? And same with streaming services and same with, so many different things. So another term I like is dripping nickels. That's the other good one. And so, one of the things to look at is, just sit down and look at those, your credit card bills and your bank accounts. Are there things you're paying for that you're barely using or not using at all? Even worse, right? So those are things where if you can kind of go through there and start cutting out some of those expenses, it's amazing. Sometimes people can save, $100, $500, even $1,000 on stuff that they're not really using or needing. And so, that's one of those things that, again, that's 100% return on your money, right? If you stop spending it. So it's a very good way to make some money by just stop spending it and on things that you don't need.
Right. All right, very good. We're going over some timeless advice. I'm giving Eric some quotes, and he's telling us what it has to do with retirement. This next one is from somebody we all know about, Abraham Lincoln. And he said a lot of things too, but here's one. He said, "You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today."
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good one. Yeah, he did have a great way with words. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, it is very true that I would probably say, well, if they're all being honest, I'd say it'd probably be 100, but I'd say at least 70% of my clients always regret not starting earlier, not doing something, sooner, right? Why didn't I put more money away when I was in my 20s or 30s and, things like that, right? And so why did we not do that? Well, because we were exactly what he was saying.
Procrastinators.
We were trying to escape the responsibility tomorrow, right? By evading it today. So, yeah, it is one of those things where if you can just start putting a little bit away, it's amazing the amount of time that compounding does and how that's on your side if you start early. If it's late, you can still do it. It just means you need to put more away and maybe you cut back more now to make sure it's all good later on. But you definitely need to have a focus on tomorrow. Always, even today.
So true. Believe me, I'm 64. My husband and I both wish we would have, back in our 30s and 40s, saved more, because now we're regretting, we regret it. And man, that would have been helpful. So we're working really hard now to save, though, Eric, and we've downsized and saving as much as we can. And we were out of debt and all that. So believe me, if you do it earlier, you won't have to, kind of scramble at the end like Bobby and I are doing. But all right, here's another quote from, actually, I would say this is a pretty heavy hitter in the financial world, Warren Buffett. And he says, "I never attempt to make money on the stock market. I buy on the assumption that they could close the market the next day and not reopen it for 10 years. So tell us about that.
Yeah, that one's a little funky, huh? I mean, I don't think they would close it for 10 years.
I don't think so.
But yeah, I mean, in essence, what he's saying is he's trying to put money in there for long term, for owning whatever company. Right now, oh my gosh, with all the meme stocks and all the, FOMO and get rich quick kind of attitudes that you see out there. So many people, unfortunately, are just trying to jump on whatever the hottest new stock is and make a ton of money. And yeah, they may do that once or twice, but the problem is the other 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 times they didn't do it, offset what they made on those 1 or 2 times. Right. and so that, I mean, that's one of the things that you have to watch out for. I mean, you need to have that long-term focus. You need to make sure that, that this money's going to last you for the rest of your life. And, there's, also on the flip side of that, you also can't just jump back in and out. I mean, that's one of the worst things that I see where, people that, in 2022, because the market was down, they said, I'm going to get out and they get out. And then of course, the end of 23, it was back to where it was at the end of 21. So, those kind of things where you have these dips and back up, if you overreact to those too, then, that's going to be a problem. So, one of the things I think is anytime you're doing anything, if you have a plan to go back on, you're assembling that IKEA furniture or whatever it is, right? And all of a sudden you see some extra bolts, you can go back in the directions and make sure you didn't skip a step, right? You can make sure that you did it all right. So when you have a plan, it's easy to know, okay, should I freak out, or are these just actually extra bolts, right? Or
maybe.
Did I forget something and it's going to fall over the second I put it up? So you need to know that information. It's really critical for you. So, that's what we do with our clients is it's like, okay, am I going to be okay? Am I going to make sure this money's going to last me the rest of my life? What about inflation? What about, risk? What happens when there's a down market? Because basically every 10 years, there's going to be probably 1 to 3 down markets, and you're going to hit those in retirement. So where do you get the money that year for to live on and such? Well, if you've got, if you got a good plan where you've got foundational and steady income and market funds, you've got a plan for that. If you've got that blueprint to worry less wealth, where you talks about your income plan, your investment plan, your tax plan, healthcare and legacy plan, then once you have those 5 areas taken care of, you also know you got a plan to fall back on. So, I think that's one of those things that you have to have always your eye on to make sure that you're on track and on target. And so, one of the things that you can do is if you wanted to get a little bit more information, set up a time to talk, 15 to 30 minutes with me, Eric Heckman, and no cost, no obligation, or you just want to get a copy of my book, Worry Less Wealth. If you want to get some of our quick reads, we've got these 10 to 15 page papers on Social Security decision. Will my money last as long as I do? Items like that. All you got to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download it directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
Yeah, and on wealthcreatorradio.com, they have, like Eric already said, there's some free reports there. But, you want some more advice? Eric's giving you, advice today. There's a lot of articles on things that you might, have questions about. What if you do need long-term care or those Social Security decisions or empower women investors, just all kinds of things. Head to wealthcreatorradio.com for even more. Eric and his team are here to guide you about retirement. In fact, Eric's been doing this for 30 plus years. So that is his passion, to help retirees have a remarkable retirement. And you're listening to Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman. Thank you so much. So Eric, here's our final quote, maybe from someone who's far less famous. This is a financial author, and his name is Jonathan Clements. He says, retirement is like a long vacation in Vegas. The goal is to enjoy it to the fullest, but not so fully that you run out of money. And tell us how true that is.
Yeah, well, no, definitely. I mean, it should be a lot like a vacation, but you don't want to be, I think it's almost more expensive going to Disney nowadays than it is Vegas. But, some of these places, when you're on these trips or these resort areas, right, everything's so pricey. You don't want to be spending that kind of stuff every day, for, the rest of your life, right? So you gotta have a little bit both ways, right? Have those fun trips, have those things, but have that in a fun fund. Have a fund set aside where you've got that money to do those things, and make sure you're doing the things that you want to do, getting out there, having some fun, seeing friends, seeing family, going to all those bucket list places, but do it within a plan. So once year by year, my clients come back to us and they say, "Oh, how am I doing? Are we on track?" And I mean, one of the nicest ones I just recently had was I had a client that we went over, how she's been doing, and she's like, "Is this about right?" I mean, I looked back from some of our reports from, I think it was about 8 years or 9 years earlier, and she's averaged only about 10,000 drop in all those years of her assets.
Oh, wow.
Even though she's been living off of them and taking income and so forth out of that. So, I said, you're good. She's like, well, I'm always worried about that Costco shopping cart. Do I need to take it home with me or not? And like, nope, you're fine. So, again, that's why we put all these tools up and all these great resources up at our digital toolbox. There's a lot of great stuff in there. You can set a time to talk, get a copy of my book or some of those reports. All you have to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download it directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
Still more to come on Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman. Stick around.
If something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. There's a particular time of life this phrase couldn't be more appropriate. How can you know you'll live the retirement you've always imagined? After all, life can be so unpredictable. You've worked hard and saved. Watch your accounts go up and down with the market. Your advisor says, don't worry, you'll be fine. But you still don't feel confident. Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial has a checklist to help you find out if you're on the right track for retirement. Take his checklist challenge. If you can check all the boxes with confidence, you may be ready for retirement. If not, Eric can help you address any potential costly mistakes. To get Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial's complimentary checklist, call or text LIST to 800-454-1184. See if you've got it right. Take the checklist challenge today. Call or text LIST to 800-454-1184. Firm offers insurance services. Investment advisory services offered through Heckman Financial and Insurance Services, Inc. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Be sure to like and subscribe to Wealth Creator Radio so you can stay up to date on ways to build your wealth and create a retirement you and your family will enjoy for years to come. Like and subscribe today and create your wealth for tomorrow with Wealth Creator Radio.
Thanks so much for joining us. This is Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman. Remember, you can text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184 to get this digital toolbox from Eric, including his book and other wonderful educational materials about retirement. Now, Eric, you and I often discuss challenges and risks in retirement. And so I thought we'd bring another story about someone who's experienced some obstacles in retirement. We call it a financial fail. So, Eric, what do you have for us today?
Well, this one's more of a compilation. Is, probably the best way to say it is sometimes people, for whatever reason, they just think they should go for it, or they don't realize how much they're putting in one spot, right? And I have one client that he's like, okay, all I need is like 50,000 more for Bitcoin, and I'll get that house in Pismo Beach and be moving. Well, then of course Bitcoin tanked huge, and that he ain't getting that house anytime soon. And then I had some other clients that said, hey, and at the beginning of 2022, they said, hey, we've got some extra cash. Let's go for it. They must have looked up every high risk tech stock that you could possibly buy. I'd never seen somebody lose money so fast. They had 80% losses on several stocks, and just kind of huge things. And and then same with companies, with people who work at a certain company, and they'll sit on that company's stock just thinking it's going to always be great. Then it dives down, and then they're getting close to retirement, and now all of a sudden they don't have all that money. And so we all know you're supposed to diversify, but sometimes it doesn't sound fun, right? Especially when something's shooting up a bunch. I've got one client at Apple who we've just always been selling off 10 or 15%, and sometimes we sell off 10 or 15 and it shot back up. So it was great. But sometimes it also went down, and it was good that we did it. Right. So, you really should never have more than 10% of your overall net worth in any one, investment, if it's a stock or Bitcoin or whatever it is. Right. And, unfortunately, people still do that. And, you want to have some tools, you want to have some education out there. So again, get that toolbox. We got a lot of great things about how to find the right balance. How to make sure your money lasts. Those are obviously big ways to not fail. And then you can even read the book, Worry Less Wealth. So again, if you want a copy of that toolbox, all you have to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, 800-454-1184. Or you can download or link to it directly at wealthcreatorradio.com. wealthcreatorradio.com. That's all for this week's show. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.
Information provided during Wealth Creator Radio is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. Eric Heckman offers investment advisory services through Heckman Financial and Insurance Services, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Any tax advice given as part of this presentation is not intended to be used and cannot be used by the taxpayer for the purpose of avoiding tax penalties or promoting, marketing, or recommending to another party any matter or transaction addressed herein. The views and opinions expressed in the program are not necessarily those of the radio station or its sponsors, and they should not construe as legal, tax, or investment advice. You should always consult the appropriate advisor before making any financial decision.